Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Welcome back to this week on the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. Today, we're diving into something that's been on my heart since I got back from Miami a couple weeks ago. So picture this. I'm at the Relax Money Conference with two of my dearest, closest friends. You know, those kind of ride or die women in your life who you can really share your rawest truths with and know that you're met with nothing but love and support, even in your most vulnerable, oversharing moments. Well, that was us for these 3 days. Over the course of those 3 days, we talked about everything: our businesses, our dreams, our family life, our struggles. But the common thread that kept coming up for all of us was this deep bone depth feeling of exhaustion, the kind that just doesn't go away with a good night's sleep. And it wasn't just about the physical tiredness. When we really started talking and offloading and sharing, it was really about the mental load that we were all carrying. You know, the never-ending mental checklist that as women we seem to carry every single day. So, this mental workload, it's really about more than just being busy. It doesn't matter if you're single, married, have 1 kid or 3 kids. There is this invisible labor that we as women take on. It's about keeping the household running. It's about remembering the dentist appointments, meal prepping, keeping track of school projects. And let's not start with the 50-step bedtime routine that we get stuck in, especially if we have younger children. And the kicker, we do not get a moment away. Even when we go on these trips, like we did this girls' weekend, we still had to leave a novel-length set of instructions on how to keep our kids alive, the house running, and everything in order. And it's not just doing the things. It's not about clearing off the checklist. It's the fact that we're thinking about these things 24/7. That's the mental load. And it's this constant state of I have to remember everything that keeps our stress hormones, especially cortisol, stuck in overdrive. So when we're thinking that we're burnt out, or that when we're exhausted as F, or that we are having mood swings or complete exhaustion, we just want to cry because we're so tired, this is what we're talking about. This is that mental load that's just keeping us stuck in overdrive. So why does this matter when it comes to our hormones? This is what we're going to dive into today. Now, I know you're probably thinking, but cortisol, we usually, when we think about our hormones as women, we're thinking about estrogen, progesterone, and maybe a little bit of testosterone. But cortisol? Well, here's the thing. When we're talking about balancing our hormones, most people immediately go to those sex hormones. But here's the truth. These are crucial for our cycles and our health and our well-being. But what many people don't realize is that there are 2 top-tier hormones that run the show behind the scenes. And these 2 top hormones or top-tier hormones are insulin and cortisol. Now, insulin is super important, but we only have time to cover one of these today. So insulin will be another day. So today we're going to focus on cortisol, aka that stress hormone that's keeping us in this feeling of just being overwhelmed. So when your stress levels are constantly high, whether it's from running the household, working a demanding job, or just feeling like emotionally you're overwhelmed, it's a sign that your cortisol is staying really elevated. And when cortisol is out of whack, it creates that downstream effect on all your other hormones, which includes the estrogen and the progesterone. So what does this look like? It can look like worsening PMS. It can look like painful and heavy periods. It could look like estrogen dominance. It could look like missing or irregular cycles. It could look like those extreme mood swings, anxiety, or realistically, any kind of mood disorder. So if we are battling period issues of any sorts and feeling like our hormones are a hot mess, we really need to start by looking at our stress and our burnout, and not just trying to pop a new supplement or create a new self-care regime and hoping for the best. Now, I know this can sound a little daunting, and it can be like, yeah, okay, so as women, we have a huge mental workload. As women, we are stressed out. We are overwhelmed. How do we create a solution around this? It can feel impossible, especially if we're caught in that cycle of that stress response. But here's the reality. There are 4 really simple hacks that you can start today that will transform how you're feeling with your stress and your cortisol. No, so I know that, stress can be a daunting thing, and it can feel really hard to tackle it when we're running on empty. So these 4 cycle-focused strategies that I'm going to teach you today can get you started right now and require no fancy tools. The first one is understanding your cycle, like really understanding this. And I know this is what this podcast is about, and I know this is what we talk about a lot. And if you've been in any of my programs, you've heard me preach about the importance of knowing your body. I say it all the time. You cannot balance your hormones if you don't know what your cycle's doing. And I know cycle tracking, it can feel daunting. It can feel overwhelming. There's so many different forms out there. Do I track my cervical mucus, my temperature? What am I looking for? Do I go for a hormone test? Do I see my doctor about blood work? What we're talking about today is just starting to understand the 4 phases, starting to look at the seasons. So your menstrual cycle is not just about your period. It's a 4-phase rhythm that affects your energy, your mood, and your focus all month long. So when you truly understand what it feels like when you're in your follicular phase, what it feels like when you're in your ovulation, what it feels like when you're in your luteal, or what you feel like when you're in your menstrual phase, you'll stop fighting your body and you'll start working with it. So if you don't already track your cycle, I would highly recommend starting today. You can use an app if you like. You can use a journal. I have an amazing free charting journal that you can just download. You can use whatever it works for you. And you can use checking your temperature if that works for you. I love all of the above, but realistically, when we're in burnout, we need to find the simplest way that we can just start to create some awareness. So the biggest thing I want you to walk away when we're looking at this first step or this first hack is that when we look at these 4 different energies, these 4 different phases, they each have a gift to give us. I always call it our superpower, but they also have something that's called like an Achilles heel to it, which is why we're supposed to be 4 different versions. Now, there's a generalization of how every woman will feel in these 4 phases, but realistically, it's going to come down individually to how you are feeling and how you're feeling in this moment of burnout, to be honest. When we start to track our cycle and once we start feeling better in our body because we've done these simple hormone hacks, you might notice that you feel a little bit different. There's been a shift in those 4 phases. So it might be time to reevaluate, re-identify with how do I feel in these 4 different phases. But the key here is to notice that you feel different every week of your cycle, that you don't feel the exact same, and that when you fight against that, it can be like trying to push through a brick wall. It really can be hard. Now, the second thing, my second hack for you is teach your kids about your cycle. this one is a game changer. Seriously, it can feel overwhelming or daunting to think about trying to get our husbands on board with cycle syncing, but our kids, they're little sponges. They just want to learn from us. They want to hear what we have to share at any age. And this has been a true hack for my home. In my house, my kids know all about my green days, my yellow days, my blue days, and my red days, which reflect the different phases of my cycle. I talked about this in a podcast at the beginning of this year, so it'd be a few episodes back. Definitely go and listen to it if you haven't already. It is the game changer for us here in our home. So my green days are my follicular days. So this is the days after my bleed, but before ovulation, when I'm really kind of fun mom. Like we call it my inner spring, and it is known as the fun days. Then we get into my yellow days, which is my ovulation days. Ovulation is all about cuddles. Like my 5-year-old, he identifies it as this is the cuddle time. The blue days are my luteal phase, where I need to start to slow down, where I don't have lots of patience, where I can sometimes get snappy and grouchy, and where I just need a little bit more quiet. I don't have as many resources, so I need my kids to understand that I'm just not the way I was the last 2 weeks. And it's so funny, like today I'm in my luteal phase right now in my blue days, and we went to go do errands today, and I went to go put the car in reverse, and for whatever reason I opened up the car door, and I'm like, what am I doing open up the car door? So we had a good laugh over how mommy's brain really does not work. And my son, when I was driving him to his activity, he reminded me, Mom, don't think and drive. Remember, it's a blue day. So like, this is the way that we teach, and this is the way that we honor it. Even this morning, because right now we're having a PD day where we live, so there's no school. And my son wanted to crawl into bed with me first thing this morning. He's 5, and he wanted to cuddle. And I just, as soon as he came into the room, I was like, buddy, it's a blue day. And he's like, oh, okay, no cuddles today. I'm like, you're right, buddy, I'm sorry. And he's like, that's okay. And he went and did his thing. So like, this really is such important work for our kids to learn. One more story around this, because I just think that it's so tangible when we think about it, and why this is so important for us to start to use it for our own body, is that we're teaching our kids that they're also not the same person every day. And so this past weekend, when I was in my ovulation days, my yellow days, my son, he looked at me, he's like, Mom, I looked at the calendar and I noticed that it's your yellow day, but I think I'm having a red day today, so I don't think I can cuddle. And I was like, that's cool, buddy. Like, thank you for letting me know. But this was his way of being able to identify that he just didn't feel like he felt like he was in a different state, and he needed something different, and he was able to ask for it. So you may think this is just about you, but we're really teaching our kids about something else. And then, of course, my period is always my red days, which is tired days. They just know that I have no capacity. My kids know that I don't cook on these days. They know that I'm not going to do laundry for them on these days. Like, I really have zero capacity. I take care of myself, and it's just a routine in our household, and they know it. So not only does this help me honor my needs, but it really does normalize the fact that we are cyclical creatures for my kids. So they really are growing up understanding that women are not meant to be the same every single day. If you've been nodding along to this episode thinking, yes, I'm so tired of feeling overwhelmed, like I'm running on empty and totally out of sync with my body, then listen up. My 12-week program, Living in Flow, is officially open for enrollment, but not for long. Doors close this Sunday, March 2nd at midnight. Living in Flow is all about helping you break free from your burnout by working with your hormones, not against them. In this 12 weeks, you'll learn how to balance your energy by syncing your life with your cycle, parent and nurture your relationships without running yourself ragged, and getting more done at work without burning the candle at both ends. This isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about making life easier by flowing with your body's natural rhythm. So if you're ready to ditch the overwhelm and reclaim your energy, click on the link in the show notes below and join us before the doors close this Sunday at midnight. I cannot wait to support you on this journey. So let's start living in flow together. All right, my third hack for you here is involving your partner in the conversation. So if you have a partner or a husband, start planting the seeds about your cycle. This doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. I really recommend actually starting small with not overwhelming them with hormone science unless they're into that kind of thing, but rather to start small. Just simple things like, hey, just so you know, I'm in my luteal phase right now. I might feel a little bit more tired than usual. I don't think that I can go do that extra errand, right? Or saying, I'm in my ovulation this week. So, let's go out and let's go for supper and let's go do something fun. Or perhaps it might be like, okay, I started bleeding today. I have zero energy or capacity to make supper. Can you please handle that? I don't care if you make something or you go and get delivery, but I'm checking out. I'm taking care of myself. And you would be surprised, even when you think they're not listening, how much they're actually picking up. And over time, it gives them a tool to start noticing the rhythm in you too. My husband, he completely understands my cycle. It does help that we talk about it with the kids all the time. So the kids are always talking about my cycle. So they're always kind of informing him where I'm at as well. But this isn't something that is surprising. Even if my husband was to come in and I'm having an off day and I'm really grouchy and he can just feel that energy when he walks into the house, it takes him all of 2 seconds to look at the calendar, because that's how I communicate with my whole family of where I'm at. He'll be like, oh, it's a blue sticker. It means that she's in ovulation or in luteal phase. So it means that I need to step up and be a little bit more and offer for her to go take a break, right? Because sometimes, especially if we're in this burnt out phase, we're not very good for advocating downtime for ourselves. We are really good at just pushing through and pretending like we're going to be okay until we really explode. And so sometimes it can be a really beautiful gift when somebody understands where we're at and they're like, you know what, I'm sensing that you just need some time to yourself. Go take some time for you. So this not only lightens your mental load, but this also helps your husband or your partner better support you instead of just wondering why you're suddenly more irritable right before your period. And then the fourth thing that I want to talk to you about is syncing your workload with your cycle. This can be an entire episode on its own. In fact, it has been, I think, 2 different episodes on this podcast. So I'm just going to keep it simple right now. I'm just planting a seed here for you. When planning your week, ask yourself these questions. What phase am I in right now? How much energy do I actually have? What's the realistic priorities for this week? So for example, if I'm in my ovulation phase, this would be the time for me to schedule those big meetings, to be creative, to be on social events, to say yes to going out for dinner with colleagues after work. My luteal phase, this is more of my focus is on behind the scenes work. It's really about getting those tasks done that maybe I have been neglecting or haven't wanted to sit down and be still to do. In your luteal phase, you kind of feel like you want to be cemented to your chair and just to do the thing with no one bugging you. In your menstrual phase, this is the time to either block time off for rest and reflection, or perhaps to do those menial tasks that really require no energy and no brain power. I'm talking about cleaning up your inbox and making sure that emails are filed into their right folders. This might be if you have a stack of files on your desk, trying to clear those up that require no energy. Do the simple tasks, give yourself a break. Do not try holding a business meeting here. You'll be pushing yourself up the hill and just adding more cortisol to that already overflowing tank. So you really don't have to push through every week at the same speed. And that is what we learn when we learn about how to sync with our workload. It's really allowing our cycle to be a roadmap of how we can use our energy wisely and really be productive. So I just really want to reinforce that the mental load is real and it's directly tied to our hormonal health. So by supporting your cortisol levels through cycle syncing, through opening up conversations with your family and aligning your work with your hormones, you will start to chip away at that sense of overwhelm, that sense of just being at capacity for stress. And remember, this is just the start. There are so many other tools that we can use to balance cortisol, like improving our sleep, making sure that we're nourishing our body with the proper foods, prioritizing joy. But for now, let's just keep it simple. Let's see if we can instill more practices that allow us to be in the being state and not just in the constant doing state. Now, I really hope that you're walking away from this episode and you feel like you've gotten a little bit of clarity, or that you're at least your ears perked up a little bit about how stress and cortisol are really fundamental when it comes to keeping you out of whack in your hormones. Like, we cannot address estrogen or progesterone until we address the cortisol. It really is like getting to the foundation and working it and healing it and creating balance and ease there, so that way we can start to address those other menstrual issues that are popping up, or more of those symptoms, let's call them. So when we start to deal with cortisol, just at a fundamental level, this is going to start to create such big changes that all of a sudden you'll start to notice that your hormones are balanced, that your moods are starting to stabilize, that maybe those fluctuations of anxiety, depression, rage, whatever your big major emotion might be, that, it's less frequent. And it really does come down to cortisol. We know that they say that stress is like going to be the number one killer for most of us, because it does such a detriment to the cells in our body, to the systems in our body. And the hormones don't get to escape this. So we need to look at cortisol and how we are creating, a balance in our life, not just a hormonal balance, but how we're creating space for joy, how we're creating space for free time in that mind, how we're creating space for flow to exist. And so I really hope that you've walked away with this understanding the importance of cortisol and why we want to address stress. And just know, like, there are so many different ways that we can tackle stress. And this is just like the tip of the iceberg here. But these ones are, I think, when we can get into the embodiment practices, this is where we create the biggest ripple or the biggest bang for our buck. And then we can start to refine with those other tools. And if you're listening to this right now and you're like, I need more, I need to understand more because I'm at capacity and I don't even think I can start with this, then just know that I'm here for you. Like, you can always work with me one-on-one so that we can get laser specific on how to balance your cortisol and how we can create the biggest ripple and change in your hormones so that you can rediscover balance. So one-on-one coaching when it comes to hormones is always an available tool for you as well, where we can really get specific with what's going on in your life, with your body, with your symptoms, and come up with a game plan that's going to make you feel like hormone balancing is one of the easiest things possible for you. So thank you, everyone. And I hope that you gained so much wisdom out of this episode this week. Are you excited about aligning to your cycle? If so, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast and like the episode if it really resonated with you. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.